All right, you know what? I'm going to start us all over because I want to make sure that that Lisa gets her full bio read to everybody. Our guest speaker, Dr. Lisa Longworth, is an award-winning author who works with individuals and business leaders through creative metamorphosis. Her unique Cocoon to Butterfly program has helped thousands transform since 1986. Her first book, Cocoon to Butterfly, Creative Midlife Change for the Busy Person, is published in over 60 countries, and the Cocoon to Butterfly Journal has been published this week. A magna cum laude graduate in the arts from UCSD, she holds a master's and a doctorate in psychology. A professional artist since 1975, her paintings have traveled the world with her lectures and workshops. Lisa's near-death experience after her life-threatening brain surgery at age 19 continues to inspire her work and daily life. Please welcome Lisa Longworth.
Hello, welcome. Hello. Welcome. Hi, I'm Lisa Longworth, and I'm excited to be here this morning to share about how we can personally activate our breakthroughs. And I'm going to give you some tips for creative metamorphosis. Back in 1986, I was kind of in the creative process, and I developed something I take a few minutes to tell you a little bit about my story. I grew up in Mission Hills, had a wonderful childhood, but by the time I was 15, I was going to junior high school and very insecure. I don't know if you can relate to this, but there was all of a sudden, there was a sense of being very aware that I needed to belong to a clique or belong to other people in a certain way. And I really didn't want to play those games. But I found by making jewelry and wearing it and then selling it, I began to do this. It gave me a tremendous amount of self-esteem. Then 4 years later, I felt like all of my dreams were coming true. Had a very successful business, a successful life. I lived in a beautiful home. All of the was so well. But all of a sudden, for whatever reason, I became sick. I started to have double vision. I was having headaches. I knew something was wrong. So I started on a journey of going to what turned out over doctors, and they all gave me different. No one knew what was wrong with me, what was going on. But finally, a physician decided to take me under his wing, and he said, "We're going to find out what's going on with this 19-year-old." So it turns out that I had a brain tumor, and it was almost inoperable. I was given the chances of survival to be about 50-50. Either I would survive from the surgery, or a 50% chance was that I would die. But if I did survive, they were saying there's a good chance, a 50-50 chance, you're going to be a quadriplegic. So I was 19 years old, seemingly on the top of my game on the outer world, but yet on the inner world, I was facing my death. And so I went into surgery, and I'm going to black out the screen because it was really the darkest part of my life. Except for something happened in the surgery where I was able to open up to something. I saw myself, instead of seeing, like if you can imagine my body was horizontal on the operating table, and I suddenly was on the ceiling, but then further out from the ceiling looking down at myself. I went into a kind of vertical consciousness in my near-death experience where I saw the whole earth from space, and I realized that this was my body and that everything was so alive and so beautiful. It was an incredible connection to all of life, and I saw that it was connected and it was beautiful. And when I returned from my surgery and started to recover, I was on fire with this sense of I've got to share this amazing, beautiful kind of vertical consciousness that we all are connected. And everywhere I looked, I saw the streams of connectivity and beauty. And yet, when I tried to share it with other people, what happened is instead of connection, people were looking at me very quizzically and saying, you know, I'm not getting it. Maybe you should see a psychiatrist. And the more I tried to share, the more I realized that I had to cocoon this passion. I had to cocoon this vertical sense of aliveness, because sharing it meant that I wasn't going to belong. And I wanted, at 19 years old, I really wanted to belong to everyone. I wanted to be a part of the human race and not alone in my vision. So for 5 years, I held that experience deep inside of my heart. And it wasn't until I was going to school at UCSD as an art student. I was still trying to look good on the outside and doing everything I was supposed to be quote unquote successful. But inside, I felt this kind of emptiness. And it wasn't until I had an opportunity to spend a week at a painting retreat with artist Francois Gillot that I had an opportunity while walking from class in the forest. I talked to her, and I finally had the courage to open up and share with her the experience I had of that sense of vertical connectionness to life, and the aliveness that was everywhere, and the connection that was everywhere. And she was with Picasso for 10 years. Paloma Picasso is her daughter. She was a brilliant artist, just highly intelligent and deeply spiritual. And she was able to mentor me in that moment and say, Lisa, I get it. Now go paint. So I was in her painting workshop and found these large canvases that we were painting on. And something happened that was transformative, where instead of painting from a kind of the outside, where I was looking for making a piece of art beautiful, I would have an idea of what I wanted to create, and then trying to make it look good so that it was appreciated by others. Instead, I opened up the inner gateway of my own heart and my own consciousness, and I allowed something to happen in the creative process where suddenly symbols and images and metaphors started coming through through the paint onto the canvas, that suddenly I realized there was a language that was coming through that I could communicate this deep inner experience I had. So I went home, I transformed my garage into a painting studio, and for 3 months I painted like a wild woman. And I ended up painting about 50 paintings, and they all dealt with my near-death experience through art, through symbols. And there was also a story that was starting to come through, a story of a golden bird that took this young woman on her back and showed her the universe. And so I put together a team of about 50 people at UCSD, volunteers, and I created it on the top left-hand side above the Transformations UCSD 1985. That's a dancer who is the golden bird with a little girl on her back. And there was an hour-long presentation that told the story through dance. And I designed the costumes for that. And then about 1,000 people attended. It was a black tie event. And I had the paintings surrounded the entire art department at UCSD. And it was an opportunity for me to express that transformations through art, through dance. There was a laser show. There was this, it was my kind of coming out as a person that had had a very powerful spiritual experience that now finally 5 years later, I was able to express. And this was transformative. I activated my personal breakthrough by finally, I think, having the courage to express myself and successfully communicate to my community. And so I went forward in the next years, finished my degree, and then in the process of being in graduate school, I had the privilege of meeting Dr. Jonas Salk, who then became my mentor over the next 5 years. And we had almost daily dialogues about the power of creativity to transform not only our personal lives, but our collective lives. And he formed the Salk Institute way back in 1960, late 50s. And now he felt like he wanted to form a creativity institute that would bring together the leading geniuses in all disciplines, high creative, intelligent people that could come together to help solve the world's problems. And as a graduate student, I said, Dr. Salk, I want to be a part of that. And at the same time, the AIDS epidemic had just come out, and he shifted gears and decided that he wanted to go the rest of his life, or what turned out to be the rest of his life, to creating a vaccine for AIDS. So he shifted gears, but nevertheless, we had these almost daily dialogues around his evolutionary philosophy, and especially how intuition and creativity are a key part of humanity making breakthroughs. So it was an amazing experience to have his support and have him as a mentor. And what happened also at that time too, when I was with Dr. Salk, there was an experience where I was talking on the phone and a butterfly happened to land on my hand. And at that moment, I heard a soft, still inner voice say, "Cocoon to butterfly." That was in 1986. And I had this large art show. And then suddenly I found many people were interested also in how they could be active and creative in their expression. And they started to come to me and ask for help. So I was asking Dr. Salk, what do I do with my life now that I've graduated from UCSD? Where do I go? And suddenly I realized this cocoon to butterfly could be the name of my work. And so I continue to develop that process. Actually, it's been 35 years, basically, since then, that I've been involved in the creative process as a path, and especially midlife creative change. So one of the things that I really want to emphasize, though, is often, especially as business people, we get so active in our lives. We're running companies, we have employees, there's lots of changes that are going on. We also want to be healthy, so we have active lives as exercising, running families, being very active externally. And sometimes it doesn't leave enough time to really have the inner life. And so we can kind of be a passive recipient of our inner life and not really an active participant. So I want to really discuss about the importance of taking an active role in being using your intuition, mindfulness, creativity, and daily practice to really cultivate your inner life. And I think, again, the problem is we get stuck in our heads. We get stuck in our conditioned patterning. And we have this thought stream, this automatic, like a radio that's always going in the background. And oftentimes we don't even realize that we are so absorbed in that thought stream, in that monkey mind mentality, that we're not able to really stop and be present in our life. In the Butterfly Journal that's just been published, I have about 70 quotes, and I wanted to just talk about the thought stream. I think we're all very familiar with that monkey mind, but calling it the thought stream, it's the incessant voice in the background of our mind, that perpetual commentator we identify with. And metaphorically, the thought stream is similar to the radio, that it's like a radio station we're tuning into. It's the background static of endless chatter. And that is honestly one of the biggest issues that we have to really making creative breakthroughs, is that we need to find a way to to stop that, just even for a second, to tune into what's behind that. So I like to talk about the horizontal and the vertical. As I shared about my vertical near-death experience, we also have this horizontal thread, which is the thread of the realm of time and space. And in human existence, it's really about the where, the when, and the how of life. And that's in contrast in the life fabric to that vertical realm, which is that invisible animating force of life. It's that witnessing awareness or direct experience of essence or being. I've loved 700 years ago, Dante wrote this beautiful, beautiful quote in his Divine Comedy. In the middle of the road of my life, I awoke in the dark wood where the true way was wholly lost to me. The true way. So especially in midlife, we can come to that place, or somehow in the middle of the road of our life, wherever that is, where we are not sure. It's dark. The path, perhaps we've been on a path where we've gotten our education, we've been able to go forward and create a family, a career, do things that we were sort of told by our society, by our community, that this is the way to be successful. But often we find that we arrive in this place where the true way for ourselves is lost. And what I'm proposing is to stop and to tune into your intuition, to practice being able to access your inner natural compass. And one of the big keys is being able to slow down and align with your nature, and both your inner nature and the nature of life. And then somehow we're carried by a much larger force when we do that. So I want to take a few moments for us to slow down and get out of that thought stream mind, and also get out of being a passive recipient, if you will, this presentation. So we're going to take maybe about 3 to 4 minutes, and I'm going to ask you to just take a moment and close your eyes and take some deep breaths. And we're going to have a moment to do an inner process to get in touch with perhaps the cocoon of your own cocoon to butterfly process, the old skin that you're perhaps getting ready to let go of. So if you'll be so kind, just find a way to get comfortable, close your eyes. We're going to take about 3 or 4 deep breaths together. And you may want to, I find it helpful to put my hand, either my right or left hand, on my belly or my heart. And closing your eyes, find yourself taking some really nice, deep breaths. Just letting go. And as those breaths, especially the exhale, deep and dark and full, and then find that your hand can feel your belly expanding when the air comes in, and relaxing and letting go. Find your hand, your consciousness, your attention going to your hand, and feeling the hand rise with the air and fall as the air comes out of your belly. Put your attention on perhaps how the air feels when it's rushing, or just touching the hairs on your skin. Feeling yourself just relax into being in your body. Perhaps you can feel a little tingling of how it feels to be in your body. And breathing and relaxing. Now just get in touch with what you're ready to let go of. Any challenges that you've been facing for a while that just feel like old cocoon skin, ready to drop away. Breathing and relaxing. Now imagine that you're in a movie theater and there's a large movie screen in front of you. See that challenge, see that old part of yourself that you're kind of frustrated with and ready to drop. See it, hear it, maybe even feel it if it's not coming up as a visual. Just imagine it falling away and see an image, see a person, an object, see something. It could be a metaphor. See anything that's emerging. It's a part of what you're letting go of right now. And as you breathe and relax, just be aware of something that you've received. It could be a vision. It could be something that you see. It could be an object or a little movie. It could be something that a small, still voice within you sort of whispers to you. Or it could just be a feeling. Or maybe nothing is coming up, and that's perfect too. So whatever you have experienced as your old cocoon skin, what you're ready to release, just be aware of it now. And slowly, we're going to come back to the room, to open our eyes, looking at the screen again. And now you're going to just be at peace with whatever that experience was for you as we move forward. So again, navigating change, we're focused on using our intuition and creativity. And Dr. Salk said, let intuition be your guide with reason by its side. And I think for me, that was so important because I was a highly creative person. And although I had good logic and that part of my brain was developed, somehow allowing intuition to be the guide really made sense to me. And as a scientist, what he was able to do, he felt that he was primarily an artist over, like that was his primary career or way of being, I should say. And he was a scientist secondarily. And he felt that way because he let intuition guide him. And he also had the opportunity to really dive deeply into his imagination. And in fact, the way he was able to break through and discover the first polio vaccine was that he knew the body so well that he could imagine himself in the body. He could imagine himself as the polio vaccine itself. And because he could imagine it, then he knew how to combat it. He knew how to create a vaccine that would annihilate it. So it was through his intuition as his guide and imagination as his guide that he was able to make the breakthrough. And then I know you're very familiar with Albert Einstein, who said imagination is more important than knowledge. And I love this idea of imagination. One of the things you may not know about, or maybe you do know about Einstein, is that he would spend, I mean, first of all, the E equals MC squared, he saw that initially as a vision, as traveling light. And yet it took him years and years and years of frustration and challenge to finally come up with a mathematical formula. But what he would do, sometimes for 6 or 7 hours a day, is he would turn off all of the lights in his study and he would just be with his imagination. And he could sit there for 5, 6, 7 hours and just watch his imagination spin. And it was through accessing that he was able to make the breakthroughs. And I love this also with this quote from Michael Meade about whether we know it or not, our lives are acts of imagination. And the world continually reimagines itself through us. I'm going to share about one of my clients who lives in Amsterdam, and she was so thrilled to get the book from Amazon delivered. She took this photo and sent it to me, and she gave me absolute permission to share her story with you. But one of the things that I think often happens with clients that I work with is they're often bright professionals, lawyers or doctors, or in her case, she's she works in a top corporation and manages big teams of people. And yet she didn't see the signs. She wasn't connected to the signs in her own personal life. And she was approaching 50 years old when she had a double whammy. Both her life partner, he came up to her and he said, you know, I have to leave this relationship, it's over. That was the first whammy. And the second whammy was, oh, and by the way, for the last 2 years, I've been having an affair. And she was absolutely shocked because somehow she didn't see the signs. So I shared the story with her, which I think is a very powerful one. You probably all remember the 2004 tsunami in Indonesia. It was devastating. 250,000 people died from the tsunami. And also probably $15 billion or more of physical damage was done. However, the boat people in Indonesia, they were out in the waters fishing. And suddenly they noticed the dolphins. The first time they've ever experienced it in their entire lives. All of a sudden, all the dolphins were swimming deep, deep out to sea. And they trusted their intuition, and they saw it as a sign, and they knew intuitively to go back to the shore where they had their houses and quickly gather their belongings and throw them in the boat and head out and follow the dolphins out to sea. And in doing so, they swam far out to sea, and when the tsunami came, none of them had perished. And also, interestingly enough, all the wild animals, also there was no wild animals that perished, because unlike the dolphins that went out to sea, they went to higher ground. So there's something that we know innately in our basic nature. We're connected to that intuitive knowledge. What we need to do, though, is pay attention to the signs. And we need to cultivate our inner life by building the muscles of mindfulness and creativity. So I've, in the Cocoon to Butterfly process, it's a 7-week process. And the first 4 steps is what I'm going to talk about today, because those are the active steps. And the first one is stop. And it's about stopping that automatic thought stream simply by, it's an active process, because we all know about getting connected, like you're driving to work, and all of a sudden you notice you don't even know where you are. You've been so much in your thought stream, you've been so much in your head, and then you have a moment where you're witnessing that. So you've stopped and you've woken up to that automatic pattern of your mind. So that happens naturally. But we can actively do that on a regular basis and we can really build up our ability to strengthen that part of ourselves by being more aware, by being more mindful. It also means, though, we know our thought streams. We know, we're familiar with listening to that incessant, ongoing radio station. But we also, by stopping, we have to face the unknown. And also, in the second week in the Cocoon to Butterfly process, we talk about being present. So it's not only stopping, but also our willingness to really be present and to strengthen that muscle. And being present is challenging. I think for many of you, you probably have practiced more of an Eastern meditation practice, where you take time on a daily basis. Perhaps you have a mantra, and you sit and you close your eyes and you go into that quiet place and you try to stay quiet and build that muscle. And oftentimes that may work for some people. That process is an excellent one. And if you have that kind of traditional meditation practice, that's amazing. And it's so fantastic as well that mindfulness now is very present in our culture. It's another way to continue, whether you're washing the dishes or you're eating a bite of food or whatever you're doing, you're working, to be fully present. And to do this continually, we really strengthen the muscle of awareness, which is really about focusing our lens of perception. The next thing that's very key to the cocoon to butterfly process is, beyond being mindful, it's also opening our inner seeing and our inner listening. And part of what I was talking about in the client in Amsterdam is that she was very good about paying attention to the things outside of her, but she really hadn't cultivated that inner seeing and inner listening, which is a strong part of intuition and creativity. And how we can do this is by creating some kind of daily practice. In my journal book, the second book that's just been published, it's a 49-day process of journaling and doing a very quick, spontaneous drawing, scribble that gets the two names. So it's a process of every day exercising your ability to do a creative act, such as writing, and also opening up to the ability to, as you write, then also you stop and you're present and you listen oftentimes to your inner voice. And this is a very important process. There's many different things. In the first book, I go over 24 different processes that you can do, creative things that you can do to build that muscle of being able to stop yourself when you're absorbed in your thought stream and refocus yourself and stop and listen to the more still inner voice. And in the first book, I have it divided with my wonderful little drawings that I made there's the egg that then develops into the caterpillar, and the next quadrant that develops into the cocoon, and then the butterfly. And this is the chapter on with inner seeing and inner listening. And again, it's a different kind of listening. We're not talking about the normal outer listening, but really the internal listening. And using intuition, metaphors, symbols, and our stories help us to really get in touch with our intuition. And this is also perhaps one of the most important messages that I have today, is the fourth week in the cocoon to butterfly process, which is about allow. And oftentimes, if you're going through a major breakthrough, just like giving birth is painful, and just giving birth to our inner changes is also painful. It's difficult to often embrace the discomfort because our DNA is to pull away. You know, we've learned, like if you touch the fire, it's hot, you pull away. So we're conditioned to pull away from it's uncomfortable. Yet the tension in the creative process itself is there, and it is uncomfortable. A lot of times, if we're cocooned for a long time, if we're in a pattern for a long time, we're there oftentimes because there's some kind of resistance to really facing the pain, facing the unknown, facing the fact that what we have come to be very comfortable with, what we've been conditioned with, perhaps may go away. So our willingness to know that this creative tension is a natural part of life. It's a natural part of the creative process, and it will allow us, if we just are present with it, and if we embrace the fact that it's uncomfortable, it will move on its own. So again, it's a natural process. And then, one of the reasons I love the metaphor of metamorphosis, of the cocoon to butterfly, is that you see it going through these different stages, and you know that it's just something that if you can imagine yourself as an egg, you know, you're you're stationary, you're in a certain place, and then suddenly you become this other creature. Your life shifts and changes. And then when you become stationary again, the cocoon, the chrysalis, you probably all know the story, but it's so amazing because what happens inside of the chrysalis is that the former cells of that caterpillar begin to dissolve and become a liquid soup. And the cells literally become food for the next part of the butterfly's life. So those imaginal cells of the butterfly of our own becoming are in the soup of our former self. And I think especially if you're going through a tremendous amount of pain, it can be helpful to know that if you allow yourself to embrace the death, the discomfort, a lot of times some of the feelings that we have to face when we're going through change they're very young feelings that we had. Some of our primary feelings that we grew up with from our parents or whoever were our caretakers, some of that deeper pain often will arise again when we're going through a major transformation. And so if we can allow ourselves to recognize that that breakdown almost always is a breakthrough. It can be a death. And if it is, I'm sorry, it's the last chapter of your life and you go, but that's okay too. In my near-death experience, one of the gifts was that since that moment, I've never been afraid of death because I know from a personal experience that the vertical awareness just shifts and changes, and that's become the way I've lived, to really walk a vertical life in a horizontal world. And I share that with you because, again, I want to come back to the willingness to embrace discomfort is such a powerful way, such a transformative force that we can actively recognize by stopping when it comes and not just automatically pulling back from a situation and being present with that creative tension and allowing it to exist. So now is another opportunity to go within. So I want to invite all of you, if you're willing to just go with me on this, we're going to take about 5 minutes to now breathe again and go into that deeper place of our inner world. So please close your eyes and just find yourself taking some deep, relaxed breaths, maybe 5 breaths with me. And notice perhaps your belly. Hopefully your belly is rising and falling with those breaths. But just allow yourself to feel your skin and feel the air on your skin. And if you hear any noises around you, that's fine too. But what you become present to as you relax and just allow yourself to fall into a deep place of peace and relaxation, feeling your skin, feeling your breath. Perhaps you feel the air as it moves in your throat. Perhaps you feel the hair on your arm. Perhaps you feel the slight coolness of the skin and the air outside of your skin. Allowing yourself now to be seated in a movie theater and watching a screen in front of you, breathing and relaxing. Noticing any outside noises are just part of this whole process of relaxing. You're watching your movie screen inside this movie theater within you. And now you're ready to witness the butterfly of your own becoming. As you've been able to let go of the old cocoon skin, the frustrations and challenges that you were facing, that perhaps felt like blocks. Now those have been let go of, and you've allowed yourself to open into this butterfly of your own becoming. Your beautiful, free, open, your vertical nature, your essential self coming out to play. Perhaps you see a breakthrough that's happened in your business or your family or your relationship. Or perhaps this is a personal breakthrough for yourself. But just now allow yourself to feel it, to see it. Perhaps in this meditative stillness, this quiet place in your mind, you might hear a whisper now. What would you call what you see and feel, this butterfly of your own becoming? If you were to name it, what would you name it? And maybe later, you can actually write this down and spend some time with it. But for now, whatever you've received from this inner experience, just feel the peace and relaxation in your body and how good it feels to stop. How good it feels to be present. How good it feels to open to your inner seeing and inner listening. And maybe even you've experienced allowing yourself to be in a little discomfort. Maybe not. Whatever has come up for you in this process is absolutely perfect. And breathing and feeling relaxed and happy. Now you can slowly open your eyes again. And we're going to be coming back and sharing that with another person in a breakout room in a little while. So I wanted to just take a moment to share a little bit. These are 3 of about 75 paintings. They're 5 feet painting, 5 to 6 foot paintings that have traveled the world. And I set up different spaces of celebration, usually taking a banal conference space and turning it into, in 45 minutes, I can unload or unwind out of a backpack these paintings that then can transform a space. And it's an invitation too, as we move into sharing with each other, that there is an invisible painting that exists between 2 people. And I just want to share this before we go into our breakout, to share with a partner about your cocoon place and your butterfly place. Your cocoon place, perhaps of being stuck and ready and frustrated and blocked, are ready for this breakthrough to happen. And then your butterfly self, what it would look like to become the best, most connected, most alive you. So one of the things I love, the ancient Egyptians, they had a hieroglyphic for a hieroglyphic for art. And what that meant, how you translated that hieroglyphic, was it was the invisible painting between 2 people. And I think what's so beautiful about that, and maybe as you go into this breakout with another person to do some sharing, that invisible painting between you and that other person in ancient Egypt was the highest form of art. It was relationship itself. And I think that is so beautiful, especially as we move into this time, are really in this time, kind of the place of the in-between. We know we're letting go of a lot, and we know we're becoming also something new that we've never been before as a human species, as individuals in our countries, and as a way to connect with others. But what that is, we have to discover by being in that invisible painting between each other, I believe. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and go into our breakouts now. And you're going to have about, I think you're going to have about 8 minutes, maybe 6 to 8 minutes to share. So about 3 or 4 minutes each, and then if you'll just switch. So go ahead and you may begin your breakout.
Okay, so I'm going to move everybody into breakout rooms, and there might be a little shuffling right at the beginning, but here you go.